student mysteriously disappeared from her own home in the dead of night, leaving behind no clues. The police quickly initiated a search, and soon a grim reality began to unfold. Step by step, investigators pieced together the truth, revealing a story that would stun the entire nation. Eve Carson was born on November 19, 1985, in Athens, Georgia. From an early age, she distinguished herself as exceptionally driven and focused. During high school, she held the position of vice president of the student council, volunteered at both a nursing home and a shelter for abused teens, worked as a congressional page, and assisted in a stem cell research laboratory, all while still a student. After graduating with honors, Eve attended the University of North Carolina, where she pursued a double major in political science and biology. Her outstanding academic record earned her a prestigious scholarship, and she quickly rose as a campus leader, taking on significant roles in various student organizations. And she didn't stop there. Eve kept up her charitable efforts and even taught science at an elementary school. She also traveled internationally for volunteer work, spending a summer in Ecuador helping doctors, studying for a semester in Cuba, and joining a research team in Egypt. Without a doubt, Eve was one of the most outstanding students at her university. She had ambitious goals for her future and was making steady progress toward them. Even before graduation, she had secured a job offer from a major company and planned to begin her career soon after earning her degree. In February, Eve was 22 years old and in her final year of college. At that time, she lived off campus with a close group of friends. On the night of March 5th, around 1:30 a.m., her roommates were heading out to a party. They invited Eve to join them, but she declined, choosing instead to stay in and study for her upcoming classes. Her friends left without her and didn't return until around 4:30 in the morning. When her friends returned home, they immediately sensed that something was wrong. The front door was left wide open, and the lights inside were still on. Yet, Eve was nowhere to be found, and neither was her car. It didn't add up. Why would Eve leave in the middle of the night? And why leave the door open like that? They tried calling her, but she didn't pick up. Still, they hoped something unexpected had come up and she had to leave suddenly. So they waited, expecting her to come back. But by the next day, Eve was still missing. That's when one of Eve's friends decided it was time to contact the police and report her missing. After hearing the details, the investigators shared something chilling. Earlier that morning, they had discovered the body of a young woman, though her identity was still unknown. They showed the friend a photo of the victim, and she instantly recognized it as Eve. It turned out that around 5 a.m., not long after Eve disappeared, police had received a call from a woman living about a mile from Eve's home. She had been abruptly woken by the sound of gunshots followed by a terrifying scream. Alarmed and unsure of what was happening, she called the authorities. When officers arrived, they found a young woman's body lying on the ground. No ID, no phone, nothing to help with identification. The only thing they could confirm then was that she had been shot multiple times. After Eve's friend confirmed her identity, detectives interviewed her roommates and reconstructed a rough timeline. At 1:30 a.m., Eve was at home studying, but by 5 a.m., her body was found just a mile away. The pressing question became, how did she end up there and who was behind it? Since her car was missing, investigators began to suspect a robbery. This theory gained weight when a search of her room revealed her wallet and credit cards were missing, and they weren't found anywhere near the body either. Medical examiners confirmed there were no signs of sexual assault, ruling out that as a motive. Checking her phone records, police saw her last signal came from a cell tower near a highway just outside town, but the phone itself was never recovered. It seemed the killer had discarded it somewhere in the woods. Then, the detectives received their first significant lead. A car matching Eve's description was discovered abandoned just a few miles from her home. Authorities quickly sent the vehicle to forensics for fingerprinting and DNA testing. Meanwhile, detectives made another important discovery. Forensic experts examined Eve's computer, the one she used for studying, and found it had been active until about 3:30 a.m. This indicated she was still at home for at least 2 hours after her friends had left for the party. Only after that did she somehow end up a mile away, where her body was eventually found. By then, News of Eve's murder had spread throughout the city, leaving her college campus in shock. Almost everyone knew her. She was deeply involved in nearly every major student organization. The community couldn't believe she was gone. Along with the sorrow came a growing sense of fear. People grew fearful for their own safety, and the lack of solid leads from the police only amplified their anxiety. As a result, detectives were inundated with tips. Students reported anything even remotely suspicious in hopes of helping the investigation. However, despite the influx of information, none of the leads brought the authorities any closer to cracking the case. Then, investigators received a crucial breakthrough. Since it appeared the killer had taken Eve's credit cards, the police examined her transaction history, and what they uncovered was significant. Just 18 minutes after Eve last used her computer, someone withdrew $700 from her account through 2 separate transactions. Attempts to withdraw more money were blocked due to the daily limit. The ATM used was located near a shopping center on the far side of town. Detectives immediately requested the security footage, and, as hoped, they got a clear match. The footage revealed a man sitting inside Eve's car, using her card at the ATM. In the back seat, there appeared to be another person. Investigators suspected it might have been Eve herself, but the image quality was too poor to confirm. Forensic experts attempted to enhance the video for a clearer look, but their efforts proved unsuccessful. Meanwhile, police discovered that the suspect had attempted to use Eve's card at multiple other ATMs across the city, though none of those machines were equipped with surveillance cameras. This pattern continued until March 7th, when authorities received another alert about an attempted withdrawal. Around 12:30 a.m., the suspect showed up at a 24-hour convenience store and tried to use the ATM, but the bank declined the transaction. Officers hurried to the store, which was in a neighboring town, and this location had a functioning security camera. Reviewing the footage from that night, they saw someone attempting to use Eve's card, but in a surprising twist, it was not the same man seen in the earlier ATM video. Investigators now had to entertain the possibility that more than one person was involved in Eve's murder, or that the killer had handed her card off to an accomplice. They tried to identify the second suspect, but, like before, the surveillance footage was too grainy to make a clear match. So, detectives turned to the public for assistance, releasing both images from the security cameras to the media in hopes that someone might recognize the individuals. Since the case had already drawn widespread attention in the community, the police station was soon flooded with tips. Yet none of these leads brought authorities any closer to apprehending Eve's killer. Everything changed on March 12th, when an anonymous caller came forward with a promising tip. The caller claimed to recognize the man in the second surveillance video from the convenience store and identified him as Demario Atwater. Detectives began investigating Atwater's background and uncovered some troubling details. At only 21 years old, he already had an extensive criminal history, including multiple arrests for robbery, assault, drug offenses, and other crimes. Although he had served time in jail, he had also been released early on several occasions. They also discovered that just 2 days after Eve's murder, Demario was scheduled to appear in court for carrying a handgun while on probation. Authorities reviewed old mugshots of Atwater and matched them against the convenience store footage, confirming the striking resemblance. It was clear they had the right person. Further, they learned Demario lived close to the store, prompting detectives to go straight to his residence. During questioning, Demario denied any involvement in the murder, but the surveillance video provided enough cause to take him into custody. As the investigation continued, police discovered that Demario was frequently communicating with a 17-year-old named Lawrence Lovett, who already had his own criminal record despite his young age. When detectives reviewed Lawrence's mugshots, they immediately recognized him as the person driving Eve's car in the first ATM footage. However, unlike Demario, Lawrence resisted arrest, barricading himself inside his home, forcing law enforcement to call in SWAT. When officers finally apprehended him, Lawrence also denied any involvement. Both suspects were then charged and held in custody awaiting trial. With neither willing to cooperate, investigators turned to building their case through other means. Cell phone data revealed something significant. On the night of Eve's murder, both suspects' phones connected to a cell tower near her neighborhood, despite them living in a different city. Detectives suspect that Demario and Lawrence randomly targeted Eve, simply searching for someone to rob and noticing she was home alone late at night. Based on the ATM withdrawals, it appears they forced her to drive with them to several locations where she handed over her card. After hitting the $700 daily withdrawal limit, they took her out to a wooded area on the outskirts of town, where they ultimately murdered her. Given the brutality of the crime, prosecutors declared their intention to pursue the death penalty for Demario. Lawrence's situation was more complex. Since Lawrence was a minor, the harshest penalty he faced was life imprisonment. Aware that the evidence might not be strong enough to secure a conviction alone, prosecutors made a calculated offer to Demario: plead guilty in exchange for removing the death penalty threat. Demario accepted the deal and confessed that he and Lawrence went out that night planning to commit a robbery and make quick money. He explained that Lawrence had called him, suggesting they target someone on the university campus. While driving through a neighborhood, they noticed Eve through a window in her house, and that's when they acted. Armed with their guns, they broke in and forced her into her own car. They then drove to several ATMs, attempting to withdraw as much money as possible. Throughout the ordeal, Eve pleaded with them to let her go, promising she wouldn't say a word. She just wanted to get home, but they had different plans. According to Demario, they decided to kill her because she had seen their faces, despite never trying to conceal them. Ultimately, they took her to a deserted street and shot her multiple times with 2 guns. Demario also shared something deeply heartbreaking. Just before they killed her, Eve asked them to pray with her. Instead of showing any mercy, they coldly shot her down. In April 2010, 2 years after the murder, Demario was found guilty. Thanks to his plea deal, the judge sentenced him to life in prison instead of the death penalty, plus an additional 30 years. After the verdict, Demario turned to Eve's parents, apologized for his actions, and admitted he deserved the punishment he received. Meanwhile, Lawrence refused to plead guilty, and his trial began in December 2011. Despite his lawyer's attempts to prove his innocence, Demario's confession along with the overwhelming evidence led to Lawrence being found guilty and sentenced to life in prison. But his story didn't end there. In 2013, the State Court of Appeals overturned Lawrence's sentence, referencing a separate ruling that deemed life without parole for juvenile offenders excessively harsh and unnecessary. Consequently, he was granted a new trial. This time, Lawrence was more outspoken, telling the court that everyone makes mistakes and insisting he wasn't the monster people thought he was. Despite this, he showed little genuine remorse, and ultimately, the judge again sentenced him to life in prison. It's also important to mention that Lawrence was a suspect in another chillingly similar case. In January 2008, just months before Eve's murder, a 29-year-old student was broken into and killed in his apartment. Following the murder, money was withdrawn from the victim's account at various ATMs throughout the city. However, authorities never secured enough evidence to link Lawrence to that crime, and the charges were eventually dropped. Eve's case not only captured national attention but also sparked meaningful change. In February, North Carolina legislators enacted a new law that introduced harsher penalties and more rigorous procedures for individuals involved in gang-related offenses. This law took effect on December 1st and applies to all crimes committed from that date onward. The legislation was directly inspired by the tragedy that befell Eve. At her university, a scholarship was established in her honor, and a memorial garden was created on campus to preserve her memory. In February 2009, one of Eve's close friends became a finalist on American Idol. While performing on stage, he shared how Eve's death motivated him to take a chance and audition. He expressed that without Eve, he never would have found the courage or determination to pursue his dream. If you found this case fascinating, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. We post crime case videos every night. Lauren Astley's life was tragically cut short in a shocking act committed by someone she once trusted deeply. Late one night, Malcolm Astley received a devastating call. His daughter's car had been discovered in a parking lot near the city beach. Without hesitation, he rushed to the scene, clinging to the desperate hope that he might still be able to save her if she were in trouble. With a torch in hand, he walked along the shoreline, scanning the dark waves for any sign of her, but she was nowhere to be found. In school, many had admired the pair. Nathaniel Fujita, the tall and serious athlete, and Lauren Astley, the petite, spirited young woman. They had known each other for years, but it wasn't until their senior year of high school that they began dating. What started as first love, filled with kisses and shared dreams, would last for 3 years. What happened next? What could have driven them apart? And why was the truth so hard for people to accept? Let's step into today's case. Lauren was born on April 1st, 1993, in Boston, Massachusetts, to Mary and Malcolm Astley. Both of her parents were teachers, and she was truly the center of their world. From an early age, they instilled in her the importance of honesty and integrity, hoping she would grow into a kind and principled young woman. In 2006, Mary and Malcolm divorced, sharing custody of Lauren. Despite the separation, they remained united in their love and support for their daughter. It's remarkable to think she was only 18. Her life was already filled with energy, purpose, and achievement. Lauren was always involved in something. She sang in a music group, played tennis and soccer, performed in the church choir, joined the youth symphony orchestra, worked as a camp counselor, and even took on the lead role in Annie at the local art center. Nicole's schedule was always packed. She seemed to have no free time because she was constantly involved in something. Though she stood at just 4 feet 11 inches, her vibrant personality and distinct charm made her unforgettable. Her greatest passion in the arts was performing, and with her strong, beautiful voice, she sang at nearly every school and community event. Landing the role of lead singer in her high school's a cappella group was a moment of pure joy for her. Outside of music, Lauren devoted her time to organizing events and participating in a wide range of charitable activities. Helping others, whether they were family, friends, or complete strangers, was at the heart of her life. Her classmates admired her for her sincerity, openness, and genuine spirit. People always knew they could turn to Lauren when they had a problem, and whenever she was asked for help, she gave it her all. At just 12 years old, she traveled to New Orleans to assist those affected by Hurricane Katrina. She would return twice more with friends to help flood victims, proving that even at a young age, she consistently put the needs of others before her own. These selfless acts spoke volumes about her character and determination. Her warmth and inner light touched everyone she encountered: parents, friends, teachers, and even strangers. At Wayland High School, Lauren was recognized not only for her dedication in the classroom, but also for her active involvement in school life. She participated in sports, concerts, competitions, and community service, leaving a lasting impression wherever she went. During high school, Lauren truly came into her own, and some friends even considered her a trendsetter. Her energy and vibrant personality made many people want to be like her. Around this time, she began dating Nathaniel Fujita, her first serious relationship. Nathan, who also attended Wayland High School, had known Lauren since childhood. He was the star player on the school's football team, known for his speed, height, and athletic skill. Nathan was one of the most popular students, with girls cheering for him at every game, but his heart belonged only to the cheerful, lively Lauren Astley. He was the only son of Beth and Tom Fujita. Tom, a talented and well-known guitarist, also taught at Boston's Berklee College of Music. His creative pursuits and musical achievements made him stand out in the community. In 2010, Lauren even interviewed Tom Fujita for a school project, which was later uploaded to YouTube. Because of her relationship with Nathaniel, she became a welcomed and familiar presence in Beth and Tom's household, visiting often. Their parents also grew acquainted, keeping in touch regularly. For the first 2 years, things between Nathan and Lauren were smooth. They spent time together playing sports, hanging out, and enjoying the carefree days of youth. Many people thought they were a perfect match, but over time, cracks began to show. Disagreements started creeping in, and their once steady relationship became a turbulent ride. They fell into a pattern of arguing, breaking up, and reconciling, only to repeat the cycle again. One day, they could be deeply in love, and the next, irritated by everything the other did. Relationships like this aren't uncommon, even among adults. Nathaniel often drew a lot of attention from other girls, yet he was still possessive and jealous of Lauren. At times, he felt she gave more of herself to others than to him. In her senior year, Lauren began thinking seriously about her future, where she wanted to go in life and which college she would attend. It was during this period that she realized Nathan no longer fit into the life she envisioned. She had grown tired of the constant emotional strain their relationship caused and began considering ending it for good. Senior year is often a turning point, a final step toward adulthood. At 18, the world feels wide open, filled with opportunities to achieve great things, build a career, meet new people, and embrace exciting experiences. For Lauren, the next big step was getting into college, and she was eager to take it. Lauren applied to Elon University in North Carolina, while Nathaniel chose Trinity College in Connecticut, where he had been invited to play football, a dream he'd carried since childhood. Lauren's friends were aware of the troubles in her relationship and wanted to help. Together, they created a list of reasons she should end things with Nathan. His quick temper, extreme jealousy, aggressive behavior, and, at times, disrespect toward his own mother. After reflecting on it all, Lauren decided to end their high school romance. On her birthday in April 2011, she broke up with Nathan, a day she considered one of the best in her life. The timing made sense. With both of them heading to different colleges in the fall, it was the natural point to move on and live separate lives. But for Nathaniel, the breakup felt entirely different. He saw it not as a fresh start, but as a devastating loss. The college offer Nathaniel had once dreamed of no longer mattered to him. All he could focus on was his relationship with Lauren Astley. Once an energetic and motivated young man, constantly training and staying active, he gradually withdrew into himself, spending most of his days on the couch, looking distant and depressed. He stopped socializing, avoided his friends entirely, and abandoned his usual routines. During this time, he began drinking heavily and smoking marijuana daily. Even though Lauren had ended their relationship months earlier, she still worried about him. She didn't want to see someone she had once been so close to in pain. On several occasions, she asked her friends whether she should reach out and try to help him. Every time, they advised her against it, warning her not to give him any reason to believe their relationship might be rekindled. In the summer of 2011, after graduating high school, Lauren was eager to enjoy her final months at home surrounded by family and friends. To celebrate the start of this new chapter, her friends organized a big party. Under a large tent, about 150 students and recent graduates, Lauren's ex-boyfriend Nathan among them, danced, laughed, and enjoyed the night. While Lauren was chatting with her friends, Nathan, already heavily intoxicated, approached her in an attempt to reconcile. Lauren, however, told him firmly to leave her alone. In her mind, everything had already been discussed, and there was no reason to go over the breakup again. They had talked it through many times, and she was ready to move forward. Besides, she knew that in his drunken state, Nathan wouldn't respond meaningfully to anything she said. But Nathan couldn't bear the thought of her being with someone else. Refusing to accept her rejection, he continued to pester and pressure her. At one point, Lauren broke down in tears, confiding in a friend that Nathan simply wouldn't leave her alone. He trailed her throughout the night, determined to stop her from dancing with anyone else. With each passing minute, his anger grew, fueled by alcohol. When Lauren once again refused to speak with him, Nathan stormed up and struck one of the tent poles with all his strength, causing the entire structure to collapse. The tent was quickly lifted and put back in place, but by then, the mood had shifted entirely. Now, it wasn't just Lauren. Everyone at the party was telling Nathan to leave. The celebration was effectively ruined. Later that night, Lauren told her mother about Nathan's behavior, explaining how he refused to let her go. He was furious that she had ended their relationship, angry that she wouldn't speak to him, and bitter over the fact that she seemed happy without him. For a while, things seemed to settle down. Lauren decided to take a job at a clothing store in the mall to earn some money before starting college. On July 3, 2011, she arrived for her shift at 10 a.m. Security cameras recorded her entering the mall at 9:45 a.m. and riding the escalator up. At 6:45 p.m., Her shift ended, and she was seen leaving the building while talking on the phone. Tragically, this would be the last time anyone saw her alive. She had planned to meet friends for a walk after work, but she never showed up. Her friends immediately grew concerned. This was unlike Lauren. If something came up and she couldn't make it, she would always find a way to let them know. Her father, Malcolm, was also worried. He knew she had planned to go home after work, change clothes, and then meet her friends. But she never made it home, breaking from what should have been her normal routine. Her father sensed immediately that something was wrong and didn't waste any time. He called the police right away to report her missing. News of Lauren Astley's disappearance spread quickly throughout the town, leaving friends and acquaintances deeply concerned. No one had seen her since she left the mall. In Lauren's case, authorities began searching immediately. Typically, police wait a certain amount of time before launching a missing person investigation, but here, everything moved quickly. Friends and family didn't just wait for her to return. They actively sought help. As soon as Malcolm contacted the authorities, the search began. That same night, police discovered Lauren's red Jeep parked at Waylandtown Beach with its windows down. It was a crucial discovery. Inside were her bag and laptop, but Lauren herself was nowhere to be found. There were no clues about where Lauren went after leaving her car at the city beach with its windows rolled down. The moment Malcolm heard about the discovery, he rushed there, running straight from the vehicle to the water as if he still had a chance to save her. With a torch in hand, he searched the shoreline, but she was nowhere to be found. Lauren's friends, terrified after hearing about the red Jeep, spent the night at the beach, hoping she would appear. They sat by the shore, doing nothing but waiting and wondering where she could have gone. At that moment, none of them even considered the possibility that she had been harmed. Police began questioning Lauren's close friends and family, trying to determine whether anyone might want to hurt her or take her against her will. Initially, no one could think of a single person. However, when officers pressed further, they learned she had recently broken up with her boyfriend. Despite this, all of Lauren's friends insisted Nathan couldn't hurt her. He could be moody and upset about the breakup, but they didn't see him as dangerous. The police understood that jealousy and a recent breakup could often be powerful motives for someone to do something harmful. They already knew about Nathaniel Fujita, and that same evening, as part of their inquiries, they went to his home. There, Nathan and his mother, Beth, spoke with the officers. He claimed he had been home the entire time, which gave him an alibi, though not a particularly strong one. Nathan told them that he had, in fact, seen Lauren that day. According to him, she stopped by for about 5 minutes but never got out of her car. They had a brief, awkward conversation, after which she left, and he said he hadn't seen her since. On the surface, his story seemed plausible. The officers were aware, however, that the breakup had deeply affected him. He had withdrawn, grown depressed, and stopped going out altogether. Beth, deeply concerned for her son, took Nathan to see a therapist, but it brought no real improvement. Desperate to help him cope with the breakup, she even went to the mall where Lauren worked, without telling Nathan, hoping to find some way to reach out. She also asked her ex-boyfriend to speak with Nathan, thinking it might help him process his emotions and begin to heal. The following morning, just before sunrise, a cyclist riding along a road near the highway made a grim discovery. Passing a marshy area, she noticed something floating in the dark water. Curious and alarmed, she stopped and moved closer, only to realize it was the body of a young woman. It was Lauren Astley, found just 5 miles from town. The night before, her friends had gathered on the beach near her abandoned red Jeep, still trying to piece together where she could have gone. They had no answers, only fear. The students could do nothing but sit there, unsure of what to do, what to think, or even how to feel. It was almost impossible to believe that the same girl they had laughed and shared moments with just the day before could now be gone. Her body was found about 30 feet from the road, floating in the water. Once it was brought to shore, the cause of death became immediately apparent. When a state police detective pulled back her shirt collar, he discovered a deep, fatal wound to her neck. 18-year-old Lauren Astley had suffered a severe throat slash, and an elastic cord was tangled in her hair. Her body was quickly sent to the medical examiner's office. All the while, Malcolm Astley clung to a desperate hope that it wouldn't be his daughter. But that hope vanished when he had to perform the heartbreaking task of identifying the body of his only child, something no parent should ever endure. Lauren had just turned 18. She was vibrant, musically gifted, and standing at the threshold of a promising future. Malcolm had to present proper identification, and the moment he saw her, he knew it was Lauren. The pain was unbearable, yet he still had to break the news to Lauren's mother, his ex-wife. The devastating news quickly spread throughout the town. Friends who once saw Lauren and Nathan as a happy couple spoke with disbelief, insisting that Nathan could never have done something like this to the woman he loved. Many found it hard to believe the situation was real, but the police suspected otherwise. After speaking with Nathan's family, they learned how deeply the breakup had affected him. He was no longer the cheerful football player admired by so many. Heartbroken, Nathan had grown bitter and withdrawn. The sport he once dreamed of playing since childhood, American football, no longer held his interest. Beth told police that she had approached Lauren in hopes of speaking to her son and cheering him up by being a friend. It's possible Beth didn't know the full details of her son's relationship with his girlfriend, which might explain her actions. She likely had no idea how that encounter would end. Lauren, however, had been uneasy about her ex-boyfriend for some time, having noticed changes in his behavior. Out of kindness, she decided to meet with Nathan to see if she could help him move past his sadness. She had no intention of rekindling their relationship, but felt a sense of obligation to be there for him during a difficult time. Security cameras at the mall captured Lauren speaking on her phone as she left work. Her phone records confirmed she was talking to Nathan. She planned to stop by his place for just 5 minutes before going home to change clothes and then meet her friends. She hadn't told anyone about her plans that day. Nathan's parents weren't home, and when she arrived at his house, she sent him a single-word text. "Here." That was her way of letting him know she was nearby. It ended up being the last message Lauren ever sent, delivered on July 3rd at 7:05 p.m. The last place she was seen alive was Nathan's house, which gave police their first clear lead. On July 4th, officers returned to speak with Nathan, but he was gone, and his parents claimed they had no idea where he was. Still, the investigation pressed forward. Authorities needed concrete evidence to support their suspicion that Nathan was involved in Lauren's disappearance. They quickly secured a warrant to search his home, starting in the garage. What they found immediately suggested something horrific had occurred. Alongside the cord that had been around Lauren's neck, officers discovered multiple traces of blood on the garage floor, on the doorknob, in the kitchen sink, and in the bathroom sink. It appeared that someone had attempted to clean the surfaces. In the basement, investigators discovered a black sports bag containing a pair of trainers completely caked in mud. In the attic, accessible by a ladder from Nathan's bedroom, they found another pair of shoes, along with blood-stained boots and clothing. At first glance, the mud on the trainers seemed identical to the kind found near the swamp where Lauren's body was discovered. This required immediate lab analysis. The results left no doubt. Nathan's clothes and boots carried Lauren's blood, and the mud was indeed from that same marshy area. Following these findings, Nathan Fujita was officially placed on the wanted list. He was located at his cousin's home in a nearby town just a few hours later. Shortly after midnight on July 4th, 2011, the 18-year-old football player was taken into custody and charged with the murder of his ex-girlfriend. When police arrested Nathan Fujita at his aunt's house without warning, he remained silent and unresponsive during questioning. This detached demeanor continued for several months, right up until the start of his trial. Whether it was out of fear of saying too much or simply an inability to explain his actions, Nathan offered no insight. On August 23, 2011, Nathan appeared in court for a preliminary hearing. When asked for his plea, he spoke so softly it was barely audible, stating he was not guilty. The prosecutor quickly suspected that his defense team was preparing an insanity-based strategy. Nathan faced charges of first-degree murder, as well as assault and battery with a dangerous weapon. During the meeting, more details emerged about the night Lauren Astley was killed. it was revealed that she had additional injuries inflicted before her death. The night before the crime, Nathan had called his cousin and invited her to hang out. When she declined, saying she had other plans, Nathan became angry and hung up. The next day, after learning of Lauren's death, the cousin called Nathan to see if he was aware of what had happened to his ex-girlfriend. His response was chilling. He said the murder weapon would never be found. Nathan also told his cousin that he had driven Lauren's red Jeep to the City Beach parking lot, explaining that he needed a break and wanted to spend time with her. By the end of the meeting, the prosecutor requested that Nathan be held without bail, and the court agreed. About a month before the trial, another hearing on pretrial motions took place, revealing disturbing and significant new information about the suspect. In 2009, Lauren and Nathan were in one of their on-again, off-again phases. Lauren continued living her life and, one night, attended a dance with friends. Among the attendees was a young man who had previously shown interest in her. After her recent breakup with Nathan, Lauren decided to give a new relationship a chance. The two danced together and even shared a kiss. Suddenly, Nathan appeared, forcefully shoving the young man and threatening to slit his throat if he ever approached Lauren again. Over time, the incident at the dance faded into the background. Lauren's friends and family never noticed any clear signs of abuse in the relationship. However, they knew Nathan could be possessive and jealous, with his temper worsening when he drank. This confrontation, which occurred 2 years before the crime, revealed the extent of Nathan's anger and jealousy toward anyone who came near Lauren. When investigators found the wounds on Lauren's body, her boyfriend's earlier comments took on a darker meaning, hinting subtly that Nathan might have been the killer. It also became clear during the hearing that Nathan planned to rely on a silence defense. While this wouldn't clear him of the charges, it could significantly reduce his punishment. By the time Nathan's trial began on February 13, 2013, 18 months had passed since Lauren Astley's death. From the outset, the defense claimed Nathan was legally insane, holding to this narrative throughout the 3-week trial. Early in his statement, Nathan's lawyer openly admitted that Nathan had killed Lauren, but argued that the real questions were how and why. The defense insisted Nathan hadn't stalked Lauren after her high school graduation. He hadn't driven by her home, called her, or sent her texts. According to them, he had withdrawn completely, avoiding people and places altogether. Friends of the girls who were present confirmed that Nathan had withdrawn from everyone, stopped attending training sessions, and avoided conversations. His friends and former teachers grew concerned because his behavior had drastically changed within just 2 months. Ultimately, the lawyer stated that Nathan was suffering from a severe mental illness, indicating that something was seriously wrong with him. Beth, his mother, convinced him to visit a psychiatrist who diagnosed him with severe clinical depression. This wasn't just heartbreak over a breakup, it was a genuine mental disorder. According to the defense, the psychiatrist recommended medication and therapy, but Nathan refused both. He may have been struggling with mental health issues brought on by his breakup with Lauren Astley and the repeated head injuries he sustained while playing high school football. The end of their relationship could have triggered an episode. Lauren feared she might somehow be responsible for her ex-boyfriend's dangerous condition and worried he might seriously harm himself. Out of concern for Nathan, Lauren went to the Fujita home on the evening of July 3, 2011. During that time, Nathan experienced a brief manic episode, leaving him unable to fully understand or control his actions. They went into the garage to talk, but then Nathan suddenly grabbed an elastic cord, wrapped it around Lauren's neck, and began choking her. He had no real awareness of what he was doing. His body was acting, but his mind was disconnected from reality. He felt no emotion toward the act itself. Nathan was still in a disturbed state of mind when he repeatedly slashed Lauren's throat. According to the defense team, his actions were the result of insanity, and their entire case rested on that claim. When it was the prosecution's turn, they argued the exact opposite, that Nathan Fujita had intentionally murdered his ex-girlfriend, Lauren Astley, because he couldn't cope with the breakup. The prosecution maintained that this wasn't a crime of sudden rage, but a calculated act of revenge. On the day of the murder, Nathan attempted to reach Lauren at her workplace, calling her multiple times. In fact, he had already called her cell phone 3 times before that. One of those calls was recorded as she was leaving the shopping center after work. The prosecutor claimed that Nathan coerced Lauren into coming to his house, fully aware that his parents would not be home. He then took her into his garage, where the assault occurred. The autopsy revealed that Lauren had sustained more injuries than just strangulation and a cut to her throat. There were also clear defensive wounds, indicating she had fought back. After killing her, Nathan removed his blood-stained boots, switched to tennis shoes, and walked over 4 miles to the town beach parking lot, where he abandoned his red Jeep. Investigators later found the car keys after he had thrown them into a storm drain. Nathan then returned home on foot, placed Lauren in his vehicle, and drove to a wetland. There, he waded 33 feet through thick muck, seemingly believing she would sink to the bottom, but he was wrong. Nathan showed no remorse for his actions. That night, he was spotted returning home completely naked, driving with the windows down and music blasting. Afterward, the young man tidied up the crime scene and concealed the evidence. He hid his wet, blood-stained shoes and clothing, cleaned the blood from the garage, and quietly waited for his parents to return. Prosecutors argued that this was not a sudden bout of insanity, as the defense claimed, but rather a deliberate and premeditated attack. A forensic doctor, called as a defense witness, testified that based on professional research, Nathan was incapable of understanding that his actions were wrong. According to the doctor, this inability was due to severe depression, repeated head injuries from football, and daily drug and alcohol use. Since there had been no history of abuse between Lauren and Nathan, and the young man had never reported anything to the police, the defense emphasized that this was a one-time lapse and that Nathan could not have committed the crime while mentally sound. These arguments directly opposed the prosecution's narrative. A forensic doctor was also called in to evaluate the defendant's mental state. This doctor testified that Nathan was fully sane when he killed Lauren. The amount of planning and effort he put into the crime showed that his actions were deliberate and that he understood the consequences. The hearing was emotionally difficult, and by the trial's end, Lauren Astley's mother sat in silent grief. The state medical examiner told the court that Lauren likely remained alive for several minutes, bleeding out after Nathan Fujita strangled her with a cord and then slit her throat. At 20 years old, Nathan hunched forward and wept, appearing to only then grasp the severity of what he had done once he realized he would face punishment for taking a life. Nathan's parents were devastated and deeply shaken that their son was capable of committing such an act. They had always shown great care and love for their son, and they cared for his girlfriend, Lauren, as if she were their own daughter. This made them even more concerned for the Astley family, who had lost their only child because of Nathan. Both families had once shared a close, warm relationship, but after the tragedy, they were left to face the devastating aftermath. The parents on both sides were deeply heartbroken. On March 7, 2013, Nathan was found guilty on all charges. The jury deliberated for a full day before reaching their decision, and justice was finally served for the Astley family and the prosecution. Yet, what comfort could it bring when their only child was gone forever? As the sentence was read, Malcolm, Lauren's father, crossed the hall and embraced Nathan's parents. He understood that both families had lost something precious beyond measure. His gesture was a testament to his strength of character. Nathan Fujita was sentenced to life in prison. In Massachusetts, anyone convicted of first-degree murder is given a life sentence without the possibility of parole. Lauren's parents believed her death could have been prevented. After losing her, they dedicated their lives to educating teens about the dangers of relationship and breakup violence. Malcolm and Mary went on to establish the Lauren Astley Memorial Foundation, a nonprofit that promotes art, community involvement, and healthy teen relationships, causes that were close to Lauren's heart. In January 2024, the Massachusetts Supreme Court overturned a law that required anyone under 20 at the time of their crime to serve life without parole. Lauren's parents now fear that this change could allow Nathan Fujita to be released. They struggle with the thought, believing that the man who killed their 18-year-old daughter should remain behind bars for life. If you found this case fascinating, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Juliana Redding's story is one that continues to linger in the minds of those who followed it closely, even though the chances of closure seem slim. Many young dreamers head to Los Angeles, hoping to make a name for themselves in the entertainment world. While some manage to build thriving, fulfilling careers, others either return home defeated or keep chasing that elusive big break. One of those dreamers was 21-year-old aspiring actress Juliana Redding, who moved from Arizona to Santa Monica in 2005. However, her path would take several shocking turns before ending in tragedy. The outcome of her case left many questioning whether true justice was ever served. Today, Juliana's family continues to grapple with the painful reality that the person responsible for her brutal death may never be fully held accountable. Let's dive into the case. By all accounts, Juliana Redding had a happy and fulfilling childhood in Tucson, Arizona, where she attended Salpointe Catholic High School. After graduating, she decided to move to California to pursue modeling, while also staying relatively close to her family. Juliana had once told her parents, Patricia and Greg, that she hoped to open a boutique someday, though her ultimate dream was to build and run her own business. Even after relocating to Los Angeles, Juliana remained very close to her family. She called her parents regularly to share updates about her life and future plans. They often exchanged text messages, and she occasionally returned to Tucson to visit them. By 2008, Juliana was enrolled at Santa Monica College and living independently in a cozy bungalow in Santa Monica. While pursuing modeling and acting opportunities, Juliana worked as a waitress to help support herself. She seemed content with her life at the time, but everything took a tragic turn on March 16th of that year. It all began when her mother, Patricia, realized she couldn't reach her daughter. What's known is that on March 15th, Juliana had gone out to play golf before returning home to her bungalow, where she spent the evening watching TV, mostly Seinfeld reruns. The next evening, Patricia received a call from Juliana's neighbors, who said they hadn't seen her all day. They mentioned that her dog was still inside the bungalow, but the house itself seemed eerily quiet and empty. Growing increasingly anxious, Patricia kept calling Juliana's phone, hoping she would answer, but the calls went unanswered, and Juliana never called her mother back. At first, Patricia assumed Juliana was just busy and would call back later. But by 6 p.m., after still hearing nothing, she felt something was terribly wrong. She decided to contact the police and requested a welfare check, explaining the situation in detail. Officers arrived at Juliana's bungalow and examined the outside, initially finding nothing out of the ordinary. Her car was still parked in the driveway, a sign that she should have been home, yet there were no sounds or signs of movement inside. When officers entered the house, however, they immediately sensed something was off. A strong odor of natural gas filled the air, and they noticed a candle burning near the main entrance. Upon investigating further, they discovered that the gas smell was coming from the stove, which had been left on intentionally. However, the burner hadn't been lit, meaning the entire bungalow was essentially a ticking time bomb. Then, officers made an even more horrifying discovery. After searching the home, they found Juliana in the bedroom toward the back of the house. Tragically, she was already deceased, and it was immediately clear to investigators that she had been strangled. The scene also showed unmistakable signs that she had fought back. The apartment bore the marks of a violent struggle. Evidence later revealed that Juliana's own DNA was found beneath her fingernails, suggesting she had desperately tried to pull her attacker's hands from her throat. While there were few clues pointing to who was responsible, one fact stood out. Whoever broke into the home had deliberately turned on the gas in an apparent attempt to blow up the bungalow and destroy any trace of their presence. Had the intruder's plan worked, much of the evidence at the scene would have been destroyed. The gas from the stove was clearly meant to ignite from the nearby candle and cause an explosion. Fortunately, because of the bungalow's older construction, the gas never accumulated enough to detonate. Investigators then began reconstructing what they believed happened in Juliana's final moments. They determined that on the night of March 15th, around 10 p.m., someone had broken into Juliana's home. Once inside, the intruder attacked her, at one point slamming her head against the floor and causing a serious injury. Based on the duration and intensity of the struggle, Police concluded that the assailant may have been caught off guard by Juliana's fierce resistance, ultimately resorting to strangling her. Phone records later revealed that Juliana had tried to dial 911, but the call was disconnected before it went through, a heartbreaking sign that she had attempted to get help in her final moments. The neighbors who had contacted Patricia told police they hadn't noticed anything particularly strange in or around the bungalow, though they did recall hearing furniture being moved and someone shouting around 9:53 the night before. Unfortunately, they hadn't thought much of it at the time. As they explained later, nothing had seemed especially out of place. It could have easily been a small gathering or a minor argument. At the scene, investigators collected several pieces of crucial evidence, including multiple DNA samples found on Juliana's clothing, her throat, her phone, and the front door. It would take some time for the lab to process these samples and identify who might have been inside her home. In the meantime, detectives began interviewing Juliana's friends and family, hoping to piece together more details about her life and any potential connections that might point to a suspect. Juliana's father suggested that investigators contact John Gilmore, a man with whom Juliana had been in an on-and-off relationship. While speaking with detectives, he admitted that he had always been concerned about his daughter's involvement with Gilmore, describing him as someone with a violent temper. His fears were not unfounded. Gilmore had once kicked in Juliana's car door and even broken into her home during a past argument. When investigators learned this, they believed they might finally have the lead they needed. They immediately began searching for John Gilmore, and it didn't take long to locate him. During questioning, Gilmore admitted that he had gone to Juliana's house on Sunday morning but claimed that, despite seeing her car parked in the driveway, she never answered the door. He told investigators that he hadn't noticed any smell of gas, but when he looked through the security gate, he could see a candle burning inside. Gilmore admitted that he and Juliana occasionally argued, and when questioned about the violent incidents her family had mentioned, he acknowledged that they had fought on multiple occasions. One particular argument had taken place on Saturday night. According to Gilmore, the tension started when he called Juliana to tell her he'd be spending the evening with some friends. She apparently became irritated and hung up on him. After that, she decided to go out with one of her own friends, while Gilmore attended a house party a few miles from her apartment. The two continued texting throughout the evening, though their messages carried a lingering tension. Around 10 p.m., Juliana stopped responding altogether. The next morning, when Gilmore still hadn't heard from her, he tried calling and sending several more texts but got no reply. Concerned, he decided to stop by her bungalow, but when he couldn't find her, he eventually left. Although Gilmore was initially the prime suspect, security footage from the night of the murder soon cleared him. Surveillance cameras showed him visiting a Jack in the Box restaurant and a nearby convenience store between 9:45 and 10:15 p.m. Additionally, several people from the house party confirmed that he had been there during the time the attack took place, effectively ruling him out as the killer. When forensic tests revealed that most of the DNA found in Juliana's apartment belonged to a woman rather than a man, it completely ruled out Gilmore's involvement and left investigators with more questions than answers. They began interviewing every woman in Juliana's circle, exploring rumors of a possible love triangle or jealousy, perhaps someone who resented her looks, success, or lifestyle. Despite collecting DNA samples from everyone they interviewed, none matched the evidence recovered from the crime scene. It was around this time that another man entered the picture, a physician named Munir. Further investigation revealed that Juliana and Munir had first met in 2007 while she was working at a restaurant, marking the start of a new lead in the case. Juliana clearly made a strong impression on Munir, as he soon offered her a job as his medical assistant. She accepted, likely eager for the opportunity to earn more money, since working as a restaurant hostess or server hardly paid well, especially given the constant stress of dealing with difficult customers. However, their relationship quickly evolved beyond a professional one. Juliana eventually agreed to move in with Munir, and during that time, he provided for her and allowed her to live in his lavish Beverly Hills home. At first, the arrangement may have seemed exciting and flattering, but before long, Juliana grew uneasy about Munir's behavior. She began to suspect that he was becoming increasingly possessive, perhaps even obsessed with her. At one point, Munir even proposed to Juliana, promising to buy her a luxury car for her 21st birthday. As a wealthy man, he certainly had the means to provide for her, but what might have seemed generous soon began to feel unsettling. Juliana grew uncomfortable, especially since Munir had a reputation for showering women with expensive gifts like cars and jewelry. It's uncertain whether Munir was exaggerating their relationship out of infatuation or simply misinterpreted Juliana's intentions. Either way, his behavior became increasingly odd, and Juliana soon realized she needed to distance herself. Determined to regain control of her life, she decided to end things with him. She eventually moved out, settling into the Santa Monica bungalow her father helped pay for, hoping to start fresh. It was somewhat surprising that Juliana and Munir stayed in touch even after their breakup, which by all accounts had ended on good terms. One of Juliana's friends later revealed that the two, along with her, had once taken a trip to Las Vegas to celebrate a friend's birthday. But things weren't as innocent as they seemed. When Juliana's father decided to look into Munir's background, he uncovered something deeply unsettling. Munir was not only married but also had 3 children living in Lebanon. When he told Juliana what he had found, he was certain that Munir's family had no idea about her or the other women he had been involved with. The revelation left Juliana shocked and heartbroken. She immediately told her father that she wanted nothing more to do with Munir. It was likely the right decision to cut ties completely and tell him never to contact her again. Despite the tension between them, Juliana's father, Greg, who worked as a pharmacist, continued to stay in contact with Munir. The two had been collaborating on a business venture, but the deal ultimately fell apart after Greg began to suspect that Munir might be running his operations in a questionable, possibly illegal way. As more information surfaced, it became increasingly clear that Munir was not the respectable professional he had pretended to be. Investigators couldn't ignore the unsettling coincidence that Juliana's death occurred just a week after the business deal collapsed. This timing led them to suspect that Munir might know far more than he was letting on. However, his DNA was not found at the crime scene, and by that time he had already left the country, making it impossible for police to question him immediately. In the meantime, they decided to dig deeper into his background, and what they found would raise even more suspicions. Investigators began looking into the women who had previously worked with Munir, as his history with them was reportedly questionable. While there wasn't yet concrete evidence to back it up, detectives suspected that the female DNA found at the crime scene could somehow be connected to him. Most of Munir's former female associates had either cut ties with him or knew nothing about Juliana, but suspicions grew when police discovered his past relationship with a 47-year-old woman named Kelly Sue Pak. Within just 18 months, Munir had transferred more than $1 million to Pak through several large payments. She had once worked as a real estate broker and had been involved in many of his business ventures. Though investigators couldn't yet prove she had any role in Juliana's murder, they decided to have Pak placed under surveillance, hoping to discreetly collect a DNA sample without alerting her. A move that would soon prove crucial to the case. Investigators knew they had to proceed carefully. If Kelly Sue Pak was involved, alerting her could risk tipping off Munir as well. So they decided to collect her DNA covertly. Their patience eventually paid off when they retrieved a discarded cigarette butt from her, which was then sent for forensic testing. The results were groundbreaking. Pak's DNA matched the samples found throughout Juliana's bungalow. This confirmed she had been present during the attack, and although Munir hadn't yet returned to the US, it strongly suggested he was also involved in some capacity. Pak was quickly arrested and charged with Juliana's murder. Meanwhile, Munir vanished without a trace, reportedly fleeing just days after learning of her arrest. Investigators believed he had likely gone to Lebanon to avoid capture. Yet one major question still remained. What was the motive behind Juliana's killing? Investigators theorized that Munir had paid Kelly Sue Pak to attack Juliana as an act of revenge, either because he was angry over their breakup or upset that his failed business deal with Greg had damaged his reputation. One prevailing theory suggested that Munir sent Pak to confront Juliana in a threatening manner, hoping to pressure Greg into reconsidering their business arrangement. While this remained speculation, police believed the situation escalated when Juliana fought back, leading to a violent struggle that ended with her death. During the court proceedings, It was alleged that Munir had agreed to pay Pak a six-figure sum to carry out his plan. This theory gained credibility after reports from the Los Angeles Times revealed that Pak had a known history of intimidating individuals who clashed with Munir, making it all the more believable that she was his enforcer in this tragic scheme. Pak had allegedly carried out similar acts of intimidation for Munir in the past. She was said to have threatened one of his clients who failed to make promised payments, and on another occasion, she reportedly menaced a bank manager who had canceled a business deal with him. When charged with second-degree murder, Pak pleaded not guilty. Despite the overwhelming evidence from Juliana's bungalow, including DNA proof placing her at the scene, her defense team argued that Munir, still overseas at the time, was the sole link between the two women, claiming they had never actually met. The prosecution intended to present the theory that Pak had been acting as Munir's enforcer, and that her attempt to intimidate Juliana had spiraled into murder. However, this strategy fell apart in court. The judge ruled that prosecutors could not introduce the theory since there wasn't enough direct evidence to prove it. As a result, the state was forced to rely solely on the physical evidence found at the scene. Most notably, the DNA that tied Pak to the crime. Prosecutors emphasized that Pak was a tall, physically imposing woman, nearly 6 feet in height, and carried herself with the confidence and authority of someone who could easily act as an enforcer if instructed by Munir. Her presence was said to be intimidating, with a commanding personality that few could stand up to. As more evidence surfaced, it seemed increasingly likely that she would be convicted of Juliana's murder. Pak's DNA was found in multiple places throughout the bungalow: on Juliana's clothing, the front door, the locks, her phone, and most incriminating of all, on Juliana's throat. Investigators also discovered her fingerprint and a drop of her blood on a dish in the kitchen sink. The prosecution argued that this was undeniable proof of her presence inside the apartment that night and that, since the two women had never met, Pak had no reason to be there except to carry out an attack ordered by Munir. Prosecutors argued it was indisputable that Juliana had been manually strangled, pointing to the presence of Pak's DNA on her throat as clear proof of her involvement. But holding Pak accountable would prove far more challenging. Just as she had allegedly fought fiercely the night she encountered Juliana, she wasn't about to go down easily in court. Her defense team came prepared to challenge every piece of evidence, using every strategy available to cast doubt on the prosecution's case. One alternative theory presented by Pak's defense questioned whether she had even been inside Juliana's bungalow the night of the murder. They argued that the lack of eyewitnesses left too much uncertainty about what truly happened. The defense also suggested the possibility of secondary DNA transfer, claiming Pak's DNA might have ended up at the crime scene through indirect contact, perhaps via an object she had touched that later made its way into Juliana's home. It was a bold argument, but one designed to plant reasonable doubt in the minds of the jurors. The defense elaborated on this theory by explaining how DNA can transfer when two people handle the same object, meaning one person's genetic material can unknowingly be passed to another. In simpler terms, they argued that Pak might have accidentally brought Juliana's DNA to the crime scene by touching something previously handled by the real killer. They pointed to a specific example: a towel Pak may have used months earlier while visiting Munir's Beverly Hills home. According to the defense, the murderer could have later used that same towel to wipe away fingerprints or evidence after the attack, inadvertently transferring Pak's DNA to the bungalow. They further claimed that because Pak was a frequent visitor at Munir's residence, and since Juliana had once lived there, it was entirely possible that her DNA had been transferred unintentionally, rather than through direct contact during the crime. Addressing Munir's alleged role in the crime, the defense argued that neither his breakup with Juliana's father nor a failed business deal provided a strong enough motive for murder. Since Pak and Munir had a history of professional dealings, they maintained that the large payments sent from Munir to Pak were simply legitimate business transactions, money he already owed her. The prosecution, on the other hand, presented a far darker picture. They claimed that Munir had once bragged about hiring a woman he described as a female James Bond, suggesting she was paid to carry out covert and potentially lethal assignments. Prosecutors asserted that Munir had both the motive and means to order a hit on Juliana. As the trial continued, the case took increasingly strange and almost unbelievable turns. According to the LA Times, Phone records revealed that Pak had contacted Juliana's workplace and was seen outside her bungalow the night before the attack. Since the two women had never met, investigators believed Pak had reached out to learn Juliana's schedule and gain access to her apartment while planning the assault. Moreover, both Pak and Munir were under investigation for their alleged involvement in a health insurance fraud scheme that police were still actively probing at the time. When the jury ultimately ruled in Pak's favor, the verdict shocked everyone. The trial had dragged on until 2013, an unusually long time for such proceedings. But in the end, Kelly Sue Pak was found not guilty. As she left the courthouse, Juliana's friends and family erupted in anger, shouting that Pak knew she was guilty and that justice had gone terribly wrong. In the end, no one was ever held accountable for Juliana's death, and the one man who connected all the key figures in the case was never even questioned, simply because he had vanished. The verdict left Juliana's family heartbroken, understandably devastated. They released a written statement expressing their deep sorrow and frustration over the absence of justice. To make matters worse, Lebanon, Munir's home country, has no extradition treaty with the United States and is known for shielding its citizens from foreign prosecution. This meant Munir would never face consequences for his alleged role in the crime as long as he stayed there. Her family struggled to comprehend how such overwhelming evidence against both Pak and Munir failed to secure a conviction. Over time, they've tried to come to terms with the court's decision. Juliana's mother, Patricia, now spends time painting in her daughter's room, a quiet act that helps her feel a small, lingering connection to Juliana. Even after all these years, Patricia says that painting has become her way of coping, a form of emotional release that allows her to create her best work when she's feeling most vulnerable. At times, she feels as though she, Greg, and their son Patrick are still trapped in 2008, the year of the attack. Unable to fully move on, still haunted by the fact that Pak and Munir walked free. Still, Patricia has managed to find a renewed sense of purpose through her art and her journey of recovery from breast cancer. She's learned to search for light even in the darkest moments. As for Munir, he is believed to have reunited with his real family in Lebanon after fleeing the United States, and he continues to insist on his innocence to this very day. He has never been questioned or formally charged in connection with Juliana's case. In 2015, he was arrested in Germany on accusations of medical fraud, but the case never went anywhere. Authorities claimed he allowed a physician's assistant, someone with no formal medical training, to perform surgeries he had promised to handle himself. More than 20 of his patients later came forward, saying the procedures left them permanently disfigured. For reasons that remain unclear, he was released and returned to Lebanon, where he is once again suspected of committing medical fraud. When investigators discovered that Pak was also linked to the 2015 German case, she was arrested as well. She faced charges of conspiracy, patient deception, performing botched procedures that caused disfigurement, and defrauding insurance companies of $150 million. But after posting a $1.5 million bond, she managed to slip through the authorities' grasp once again. There's no easy answer or satisfying conclusion to Juliana's story. Once it became clear that Munir had been living a double life, her family did everything they could to protect her. Yet he ultimately walked away without facing any real consequences. Some may call this an unsolved case, but deep down, everyone knows the truth, no matter how much solid evidence was presented. Sometimes the justice system simply fails. People place their faith in due process, believing it will prevent such failures from repeating, but too often it doesn't. All we can hope is that Juliana's case serves as a reminder and a lesson for the future.